This is the Born to Be podcast, where we believe you were created on purpose and for a purpose. Each week, we deliver inspiration and interviews with today's top thought leaders who are living out their unique calling every single day. Are you ready to discover your true identity and become who you were born to be? The future is yet to be created. And now, here's your host, Darren Earlywine.
Welcome back to another episode of the Born to Be podcast. Darren Earlywine, your host here. And I want to remind you once again, I know we do it every single episode, but I want to make sure you don't forget. We believe that God has created you on purpose and for a purpose, that he's near you, not far away from you, and that he is for you, not against you. And if you haven't taken the time to go check out the Spiritual DNA online course, I want to encourage you to do so. It's our main sponsor of our podcast, and it's really why we exist. You just go to spiritualdna.me. If you want to check out the course, 5 different assessments that's going to help you unpack the unique way God's created you. All the video teaching from me on there. You could take the course by yourself at your own pace, wherever you want. You could literally discover God's purpose for your life in your pajamas if you want to. Just go to spiritualdna.me and check it out. And on this episode of the Born to Be podcast, I'm excited to welcome Curt Tappendorf to the studio. Curt and I have known each other for a handful of years. Our kids are in school together, play sports together. But the reason we invited you in, Curt, is you guys have just begun the process of opening a brand new coffee shop in the Fishers area called Schoolhouse 7 Café. And it's not, we don't have everybody on the podcast that, is starting a coffee shop. But there's something really unique, Curt, about what you guys are doing, about the location, the building, and some of your heartbeat behind it. And so I wanted to be able to share that story with our listeners. But welcome to the Born to Be podcast.
Thank you, Darren. Glad to be here.
Very cool. So, Curt, we've known each other for a while. I think I was telling one of our producers before you came in that I was like, well, Curt's coming in. I was like, our kids know each other. I was like, I think in like 6th grade, I think my son almost dated his daughter, and then they didn't. And my other son, they play baseball, against each other and with each other. But we've kind of, crossed paths through the past probably 14 years, I guess.
We have, yes. And if I can clarify on that statement, Darren, I think what happened with that is that, I think Cole asked Brianna out, and I think her father or his father had said, Cole, I think you're too young for that. So called it off right there.
Those are the true details. Those are the details. I had just in my brain, I remember as it was like, he's like in 6th grade. And I think he had like a little like 5th grade, girlfriend. I was like, oh, whatever. And then I was like, you know what? I'm like, I don't think he needs to be distracted. Like just do school and life, whatever. But like I hadn't like given him like the official like dad speech of like, hey, I think the girlfriend thing is not for you right now. And then he like comes home and tells me, hey, ask Brianna to be my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, well, that's gonna be a problem for you, not for me. But anyway, so I'm glad they got that cleared up. But Curt, you guys, you're from Iowa, right? Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yes, I'm from the Quad Cities. Grew up in East Moline, Illinois.
So how long have you been in the Indianapolis Fishers area?
So we moved here back in 2003, and we moved here as a result of a job with Simon Property Group. And I worked back in the Quad Cities for about 8 years. Well, prior to that, kind of growing up, I've got 4 sisters, and 3 of them still live in the Quad Cities. One lives in St. Louis, and my parents have always said I'm the rose between the thorns.
Yeah.
And fortunately, this isn't a call-in show where they can call in and argue that. So got that going for me. But great family. I mean, great sisters, very supportive, and we were one of those Catholic families that we went to church every Sunday, and we said the rosary every Sunday night, and we would focus on family dinners, if not 3 nights, 4 nights a week, and that was in the times when you could actually do that. We didn't have the travel sports, and we didn't have kids going 16 different directions.
Yeah. So
we were able to do that, and I think a lot of that is the reason why we grew up how we did, and we're still close to this day.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I attended a Catholic grade school, Catholic high school. After high school, I went to Augustana College, where I majored in physics and played baseball. Went there for 3 years, and after Augustana, I attended University of Illinois in Champaign, and went there for 2 years. So it was part of a 3-2 engineering program. So
engineering, where did that thought, where did that idea, where did your did you dream about being an engineer as a kid? You like building stuff, figuring out how things worked? I mean, kind of where's the genesis of that?
So my brother-in-law, who's my he was one of my best men, and at my wedding, he was a general contractor, and his major was civil engineering. And so I worked for him in the summers in high school, and I respected kind of what he did and what he became. And so kind of what I saw in him, I kind of saw what my future was going to be.
Right.
And so I said, civil engineering, I like being outside. I like to be doing different things, different projects. So that's kind of what my course is in life, I think. So
yeah.
I went down that path.
Did you see, did you have natural abilities that you saw that would help in that career as you started interning with him and helping out? So you're like, well, I can actually be good at this.
I did, yeah. And so with him, it was more on the residential side. But what I did during college is I interned with a company called Heir, and that's where I really got into the surveying aspect of things. I got into the design aspect of things. And so that's where I really saw that that's what my interest levels were.
Right.
And so that's kind of where I steered towards civil engineering. And with the college program that I had with the 3-2 program, it allowed me to still play baseball at a D3 level, and not really, obviously I wasn't as good to be at a D1 level. So I still wanted to play baseball in college. And so that allowed me to do that and go down that path of becoming a civil engineer.
Very cool. What position did you play in baseball?
Catcher. And then I tore a tricep muscle. So then when I did that, then I played first base. So it was a combination of catching and first base.
Right on. Right on. So obviously, well, not obviously, our audience doesn't know. Like your kids are all very athletic as they're growing up, and so is that something? I mean, as far as the things you learned in sports, I mean, is that one of the reasons that you're involved coaching your son and involved in their sporting life? I mean, is it just for the sporting side of things, or is there more even just about what sports taught you and brought you in your life?
I think that was a lot of it. I mean, sports taught me to get outside of my comfort level. When I was growing up, I had the 4 sisters, and they did all the talking for me. So I would imagine. I didn't talk hardly at all, right? So it was them doing all the talking and me just kind of sitting in a corner and kind of trying to understand, what my role was going to be. And part of being the only boy in the family was I put a lot of self-imposed pressure on myself, because I wanted to be the best son. I wanted to be the best brother. And, what defined best? Well, for me, that was difficult because I didn't know what success really meant, and I didn't know what best really meant. And so I just kind of looked at the figures around me. My dad was, he was in the corporate world. He was a nuclear physicist.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So it's like that sounds like it's not rocket science, it's not nuclear physics. I mean, what in the world?
So he worked at a nuclear plant out in Idaho growing up, and moved back to the Quad Cities then, and started the family, and decided that nuclear physics was probably not the path to go. That there was some shutdowns in the government that was recurring, and so he decided to go work for John Deere, which the headquarters there in Moline.
Yeah.
So he was very successful with his career at John Deere, and so I kind of sensed that the corporate ladder role that defines success, and so that's kind of what started my drive going in. And what I did was, when I out of college, I ended up going to, like I said, work for Shive Hattery, and I wanted to kind of climb that corporate ladder. So when I was 27, 28, I started to get more out of design and more into the administration role, where I became a team leader of the GIS, survey, landscape architecture, civil engineering division. And so that was good, but same token, I realized I still wanted to get into design. And so I had a call one day from a headhunter, and I was like, tell me more. And it was just one of those days at the office where I took that call and I listened, and the headhunter was for Simon. And so within 2 weeks, I had interviewed and accepted the position, and my wife, Sarah, and we moved down here. That was back in 2003, and we decided, hey, we'll try this out for a few years. We're both kind of Iowa, Illinois people, so we'll try it for a few years here and eventually move back. And so what we decided then, after being here for 16 years, that this is a great place to live.
Yeah.
And raise our 4 kids. Like you said, I've got the 4 kids. Brianna, she's 14. Aiden, he's 12. And then Ella is 9, and Tyler is 7. And so as I started to work here at Simon, great job, had a great boss. And it was one of those things where I ended up kind of going through exactly what I wanted to do. I did a lot of traveling, which I enjoyed, saw the country, saw lots of different areas, which I wouldn't be able to do without the job that I had. And so that was fun. And then start having kids. And, typically when people start having kids, things start to change. Well, that's exactly what happened with me.
Yeah.
And fast forward 10 years in my job, I am still working at Simon, and my boss decides after 25 years working at Simon, he's going to retire. And so that's what kind of brought me to, all right, Curt, success has been for you climbing that corporate ladder.
Yeah.
You've went from team leader at Shive Hattery to becoming an engineer with the largest real estate company in the country, to now having the potential to be the head engineer of Simon Property Group. And so I thought a lot about it, whether or not I'd apply or not. I mean, who knows if I would have gotten it, but I thought, prayed, reflected a lot on the opportunity. And it just so happened one night that during that week of when I had to decide, I came home from work, and I sat down, and Brianna was 8 at that time, Aiden was 6, Ella was 3, and Tyler was 1. And sitting on the couch, and they're all in front of me, and Brianna and Aiden are doing this puzzle, and Ella is sitting there with Tyler cooing and cawing, and that's where it hit me. That my success role in life at that point, it hit the fork in the road, and I no longer wanted to necessarily climb up that corporate ladder, but I wanted to go and instead of pursuing the job of head engineer, I wanted to pursue being better at being dad. That's a title that I wanted to pursue. And so I never applied for the job. I still have the same position that I have at Simon for the last 16 years, which is fine for me. And I've been able to kind of not travel as much as I used to.
Yeah.
I get a lot of flack from people in my department about having all the projects within 465. Because I don't want to travel, and so I get the Castleton Square malls and the Greenwoods and those kind of things that are close by that I don't have to necessarily travel. And if I do travel, I do love to drive, to take car trips, and I'll usually take 1 or 2 kids with me, and take them out of school for a day and have them sit in a business meeting and kind of have them learn real life real life opportunities of being on the road and spend time with them. And so that's what I've learned as far as that opportunity, and it took me that week to reflect on what is important in my life.
Yeah.
And what was important to me growing up has changed, and so that's where I am today.
Curt, I think it's interesting that you had that moment, because I think I've talked to many people who are on the backside of a decision like that, where it's more of a decision that's full of regret more than it is full of reflection and gratitude, where it's like, listen, I went after it. I sacrificed family. I sacrificed time just to chase money, to chase prestige, to chase, the promotion. And not there's anything wrong with promotions, not there's anything wrong with money, but just their priorities got upside down. And, one of the things we talk about, in our spiritual DNA course and the live event often is there's 2 kinds of discipline in the world. I was taught this by a mentor many years ago. There's the pain of discipline and there's the pain of regret. And life has a lot of pain in it. But
right.
when we make decisions based on our principles, based on our values, oftentimes it leads us to make those decisions that we experience the pain of discipline, which means it hurts right now. I'm not going to go for this promotion. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to choose this pain now. But the pain of regret doesn't usually hurt right in the moment, but it hurts down the road and usually for a long, long time. And so, in that moment, to be able to choose the pain of discipline of, I see what my priorities are. I want to make those adjustments. But I'm guessing in those decision-making moments, there probably were some people around you that maybe didn't share those values or couldn't, maybe it did it not like add up to them. Like, why wouldn't you just keep climbing?
There's a lot of people at work that asked me that question. And, what my response to them was, well, it's not my time right now. I didn't get into the details and specifics as to what in my heart kept me from doing that.
Yeah.
I just said it wasn't my time right now. And that's part of, I'm a real private guy. I don't really share a lot of my emotions, and sometimes it drives my wife nuts because she's outgoing and she wants me to talk a lot, and that's not really me. But it was something that I knew in my heart that was the right thing to do.
Yeah,
at that time.
So Curt, I'm guessing that I'm really fascinated by you guys opening up this coffee shop. I've driven past this old abandoned one-room schoolhouse for years now, because it's right in the corner of where I take my where we all take you take your kids to school. I take my kids to school. How does a civil engineer working for Simon Malls and Property Group, how did you get to the place where it was like, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go get that 100-year-plus old schoolhouse and make it a vibrant place of life, in community. Like, take me back to where the first idea hit you. Like, hey, we could or we should do this.
All right. Well, that's there's a lot involved with that. So let me try to summarize as best I can. And part of it is kind of what I was just talking about in terms of where my success hit the fork in the road.
Yeah.
And 7 years ago, I was asked by my high school to come back and give the keynote speech to the graduating seniors. And so I went back and, before I was doing that and getting ready, I'm thinking to myself, why was I asked to give the keynote speech? I'm not a Harvard grad. I'm not a CEO of a big company. I'm just Curt Tappendorf, lowly Curt Tappendorf, civil engineer, Simon Property Group, not much to me. Why was I asked to do that? And so I kept thinking to myself, what am I going to say to these seniors to kind of make them, or to want to have them listen to me?
Yeah.
And so again, reflection, prayer. I started to think, Curt, just be yourself. That's what they're wanting. That's what most of those seniors are going to. Most of them are not going to go out in the world and become Harvard grad. They're not going to be a CEO of a big company. They're just going to, chase their dreams and chase their successes.
Yeah. And
what that is. And so as I started to figure this out and realize that, I am a simple guy, what I put together was it's called my take on the KISS principle.
Yeah.
And so what I told them is that, the KISS, the letter K, in baseball, as we all know, a forward K stands for strike out while swinging. Mm-hmm. A backward K stands for strike out while looking. And what I told that class is that don't strike out looking. I said, be a forward K and take that swing, and if you miss, it's okay. And don't be afraid of making mistakes and striking out. Don't fear failure, because we're all going to fail, and we got to make sure we take that swing. And if we don't take that swing, we'll always wonder what if.
Yeah.
And so I told them to go after what they believe in and what fuels their passions. And I said, never throw down that bat and say that you can't. And in our household, can't is a 4-letter word.
Oh, yeah.
And whenever I hear that, I always say, you know what? Where there's a will, there's a way. And so I told that class, I said, go find your will, and God will help find that way.
I have an embarrassing story. Well, it's a comedy break here. I agree, can't is a 4-letter word, but I was ashamed of myself. Last summer, we were out on a lake with some friends on their boat, and my son Ty was trying to learn to wake surf. And Ty's he's a great athlete, determined kid, but he can get discouraged easily and quit. Like, he won't push himself out of his comfort zone. And I always know, like, what could be on the other side of, like you're saying, like, don't quit, like, push through. So he's trying, and he's almost got up like 3 times, whatever. And then I'm getting frustrated because he's starting to quit, and he's laying there in the water, and he goes, I just can't do it. And I mean, not a good dad moment, but I jumped up and I yelled at him. I screamed literally at him. I'm like, can't. I'm like, can't's a 4-letter word. It's like, just try again. And I sat down, and I thought to myself, that was probably not my best parenting moment. And the lesson was for sure lost on Ty, because I took the principle and applied it at like 100 decibels with my angry dad voice. But I couldn't agree more, Curt, that it is a 4-letter
I am going to
word.
hire Ty as my marketing manager for the Schoolhouse for sure.
Do it. He'll make that happen.
He's got a great personality.
Just don't ask him to wake surf to do it.
So the other part, the I. So the I is the impression, and that's about making the most of each opportunity. And from the first impression to the last, even though sometimes it feels like it's overwhelming. And I said, life is full of trials and tribulations, and oftentimes we feel that there are more hills to climb than valleys to walk. And with this overfeeling comes one of the most common excuses that is on the top of my pet peeve list, and that is the I don't have time. And we hear that so much about, I don't have time, and our kid, our household, that's another phrase that's never said, and it's one of those things that, we're all given 24 hours a day, right? And so time is it's the great equalizer, and you can never make time because God's given us a set amount of time, and we've got to maximize that time. And this can be achieved by establishing priorities, and that's what we have to do is reflect and establish those priorities to maximize that time. And I told him, I said, hey, make your mark, stamp your impression when you can, because as we all know, life is short, and that tomorrow is no guarantee. The S is the first S stands for strengths, and I said strengths are built by challenging talents with both skills and knowledge. And identify your strengths, which God has given us, and what fuels your passions. And I said, focus on those opportunities that interest you. And then, to quote one of your taglines, God made us on purpose and for a purpose. And so don't bog yourself down focusing on trying to improve on your weaknesses. Your success is achieved by maximizing your strengths and not the strengths of others. And that's kind of what hit me when I turned down that head of engineering or the application process, is knowing that my strength really wasn't there. It was a strength that I thought growing up that strength was a success, but it was the success of others, not my success. And so that really helped when I was kind of going through this formulation of what I was going to say to this class, what strengths and success actually meant to me.
That's huge, Curt. One thing when we get done with the interview today, I'm going to go spend about an hour and a half with one of our team members, Tracy Cheatham, who she's actually a strength certified coach, and Strengths Finders is one of the assessments that we take people through in our Spiritual DNA online course. And I couldn't agree more with what you just said there, because we've actually had Tracy take every one of our team members with Blackbird Mission, the ministry that runs the radio show and the podcast and everything, and mine down to all the way through like the 34 strengths that you can take in the Strengths Finder profile, and did our best to align our team, so everyone stays in that, kind of like 8-lane super highway of their strengths. Because man, when you don't focus on that, I think so many people focus on their weaknesses and try to become, I got to become, well-rounded, or most of their life thinking about their weaknesses. But yeah, there's such power in leveraging that the understanding of the strengths that God's given us.
And I know for sure when growing up, that was one of the things that people focused on, seeing more is the weaknesses. How can you get your weaknesses better and stronger, instead of saying, how can you get your strengths stronger?
Oh, yeah.
And, so I think time is, over the last 10, 15 years, I think people have realized that I think we focus on strengths. And there's a lot of books that have been written about focusing on strengths. And so I definitely feel that's a positive. So the final S, what I told them is simply smell the roses, right? Our lives are moving at a faster pace than ever before, and it's easy for us to get caught up in the mayhem of this fast-paced world where our priorities become blurred. And take those opportunities when we can to celebrate the accomplishments and smell the roses. And we tend to be more concerned with what's next instead of what was or what is. And, we're always chasing that next dream, and we're always chasing that next project instead of looking back and saying, what went well in this project, or what did we do well, and great job, and celebrate grand openings. And that's one of the things that we're not doing much anymore is those grand openings, because of budgets and that kind of stuff. And so those opportunities gave us time to look back and smell the roses on those projects, so we can kind of see, wow, this was a good thing, and things went well. And so I encourage those kids that, savor the accomplishments with those around you. As we go on life, if you fail to recognize and reflect on the good that surrounds you, we'll never take on the life that God intended us to take on.
It's good.
So it was real simple, and it was to the point. And so I think hopefully it kind of had some impact on them. And so that's kind of where I went with that. So back to what your original question was as far as the Schoolhouse 7 Café. So I kind of took that into mind, and I said, all right, my strengths, I love design. I love community. I love family. I love interacting with people, and I love developing relationships. And so when Brianna was in 5th grade, before Cole asked her out in 6th grade. When she was in 5th grade, we had, I would always take her to breakfast and then drop her off at school. And I still do that with her and Aiden. And the bus stop picks them up right in front of her house, but I still take them to school every morning. And that 10 minutes is the best 10 minutes of my day. I mean, I love that special time, that one-on-one time with them. And so when she was in 5th grade, I was taking her to school, and I told her, I said, hey, Brianna, we were turning into HIJH, and I said, Brianna, before you graduate from 8th grade, you and I are going to have breakfast somewhere around here. And I was actually looking at the property across the street, and I love that corner. There's a lot going on at that corner. There's a lot of growth in that area.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was a hot spot. And so fast forward 2 years, and Sarah and I were going to Brianna's parent-teacher conference at HIJH. And so we're pulling into the school, and I see a realtor putting a for sale sign up in the yard by the house. At that time, I thought it was just a house. And so I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. And so I thought the entire time during the conference about, what about doing that? I didn't pay attention, as far as what the parent-teacher conference was about.
What my kid's teacher's name
so
is.
My mindset was on what was going to happen with this thing. So I got the number. I called that night, put an offer on it, accepted the offer.
Oh, wow.
Not knowing anything about it.
So Sarah, you just had the idea. You had the vision. You saw the opportunity, and boom, you jumped on it.
I jumped on it, yeah. And after that, I told Sarah, Sarah, we bought this house. And she's like, what?
By the way, remember yesterday at the parent-teacher conference? Yeah, now we own this house on the corner.
So she just shook her head, and she's like, whatever. But she was good about it. And so we bought this, not knowing what we would do with it. And so we started to dig into it more, and we started to, I was like, I'm probably just going to rent it out. I love the corner. It's a great corner. Just rent it out, keep it for a long-term investment. So as we started to get into it, I started to learn more about the history. And the history, realized it was a schoolhouse. It was built in 1900, and so I was like, this is really cool. And so I said, well, I just want to be a landlord. I don't want to be a tenant. I don't want the hassles of the day-to-day operations, so I just want to worry about being a landlord, collect rent, so on and so forth. So when we put a for rent sign up, then we got some calls from boutiques, and we got calls from insurance companies, and we got calls from daycare, and those would be great uses, but just didn't really get me excited, right? So one day I got a call from a gentleman and his wife who said they wanted to open a coffee shop, and I was like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And so they're from Carmel, and so they came over, and super excited to meet them, and so we started talking and showed them the place, showed them all around, showed them my vision, what I was looking at in terms of having the main floor be the original one-room schoolhouse, and then the second floor would be a community room and overflow for people when to study, business meetings, whatever. And so I'm talking, and I'm pretty much talking to the wife, and the husband's just kind of sitting there like, quiet. And I'm like, oh, they're not interested. This is kind of wasting my time. 25 minutes into the conversation, the gentleman's like, wow. And I'm like, wow, good, or wow, what?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know what? And he said, this is fantastic. He says, if I were 10 years younger, he says, I would take this on a heartbeat. He says, but this place is going to do fantastic. He says, let me tell you something. He says, the best person to carry on a vision is a visionary himself. And he told me what I knew, but what I didn't want to hear, right? Because I wanted to just be on the one side of landlord and not really venture into the operations, because that's the area of unknown, right? I haven't done that part of it. And so going back to, strengths and impression and all that stuff of what I believe and what my success feels like is, all right, I'm going into this, and I'm going to take that swing. And so I went home that night, and I said, Sarah, we're going to be coffee shop owners now. And again, she's like, what are you doing to me? But what he did tell me is that there was a gentleman named Jared Staten who owns Brickhouse Coffee, and they're a local roaster down in Greenwood, and they used to roast in Fortville. And he's a very religious man, and was in Spain for 5 years on a missionary trip, and that's kind of where he developed the art of roasting coffee.
Yeah.
And so I went down there and I met with him. And this whole journey has been about, taking one step and taking me one direction and taking me another direction and meeting different people. And it's just putting all these puzzles together. And when I met with Jared, I knew he was the fit. I mean, he was the guy that I needed in order to make this coffee house a success. I know nothing about coffee. I know nothing about operations part of it. He's that guy. And so I got together with him and we developed a plan to put this thing in place. And so going back on my strengths and the vision I had for this thing, I put together all the plans and was able to work with the city on getting the drive-through put in and getting another curb cut on Southeastern and getting enough parking spaces and understanding how I want the whole interior to look. And we're going to be repurposing a lot of the wood that was inside there to make tables and to face the coffee bar and to really make it feel like it's history and not something new. And working with Simon, I've done the new for 16 years, and this is something you can't build. It's something that's there and something that is going to be hopefully there forever. And so part of my journey through this got me to meeting a gentleman by the name of George Underwood. And George Underwood graduated from that school in 1940.
Wow.
And so I got his name from the principal over at the intermediate junior high, where George Underwood gave Principal Mencken a binder with the history of the schoolhouse that had his report card, diplomas, pictures, all that stuff in the binder.
From 1940?
From 1940.
Wow.
Yeah. And a whole write-up about how the discipline was back in that time, that in the wintertime when there was 2 stoves on each side of the schoolhouse, and if you were not good, then you would sit in the middle, and if you were good, you'd sit next to the stoves. He showed me exactly where he sat all 8 years. So going back prior to that, the binder that he gave to Principal Mencken was from 2012. And so 2018, I'm looking at it, and in that binder was George's cell phone number. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to give him a call, and hopefully he answers. And so I call him, and sure enough, he answers the phone, and we talk for about an hour. And so he said, hey, I want to come down and see the place, and let's go over it. And so his wife, his daughter, Beth, brought him down to the schoolhouse back in July of 18, and we walked around the place, and he knew everything about every part of that place. He said, that depression over there, that's where we played baseball. That was home plate. Here's where the outhouses were. The horse and buggy dropped us off over here back in the day. Here's where the well was. And just his recollection and memory of that place was unbelievable. And so to me, that was like, all right, this had an impact, obviously, on his life. And it's meant a lot to him. I'm sure it meant a lot to other people. And as I've gotten into this thing, I've gotten lots of calls and emails from people saying, thank you so much for preserving the building, and we're looking forward to seeing what's happened. So that's kind of inspired me, kept me going. And so George and I text message twice a week. And at that time when we first met, his daughter Beth said, he's got terminal thyroid cancer, and we're not expecting him to live through Labor Day. And so I had where he came down before Labor Day, and we had a little groundbreaking ceremony with him, and so after that, then we said, well, George, we'll see you at Christmas time. We're gonna have this thing lit up. We'll see you at Christmas time, and I kind of kept him going, and sure enough, Christmas time came, and he was still around. Wow. And so we said, all right, George, we'll see you in the spring. Trees are gonna come out. It's gonna look beautiful. We'll see you in the spring. Spring came, still here. And so now what we're shooting for is this is Schoolhouse 7, and this was the 7th schoolhouse in Fall Creek Township. And so we're keeping the number 7 as kind of the personalization for the building. And so our hope is to have some sort of opening on 7/7. And so George he's in Florida now, and he's got his flight booked for July 5th. He's going to come back down. He's going to be there for the opening.
That's awesome. And
so it's just one of those things that's special, that I knew that what I'm doing here is there's something there, and I don't know what it is yet. Yeah. But there's something there, and as I've started to get further into this thing too, with these redevelopments and It's in rehabs. They always go over budget, right? And so I was one day working. This was March 17th. I'll never forget it. March 17th, I'm out there working, I'm out there usually on weekends and nights, and I was pushing a wheelbarrow on that Sunday, and a gentleman comes up in a green sweatshirt or green sweater. I was like, oh, getting ready for St. Patrick's Day, and he's like, I said, yeah. He says, I read a story about you, and he says, I love your vision, and I want to help. And I was like, well, you're kind of dressed up. I said, I got a wheelbarrow over there if you want to help out. And he says, no. He says, I'm a banker. He says, I've got financial connections that can help take some of the stress away from you as far as the finances on this operation. And the timing on this, Darren, was impeccable. I mean, I had just received word Friday that the SBA loan that we applied for didn't go through. And I had a lot of people say, why don't you do a GoFundMe page and do something like that to raise money? People be all over this from a historical standpoint. I'm like, to me, the GoFundMe pages are for those people that are put into bad situations, not because they were in it or not because they wanted to be put into it, but because of outside circumstances.
Sure, yeah.
I put myself in this mess, so I don't want people to have to bail me out. My wife and I we got a home equity line of credit to get kind of things moving along, and because it was one of those things we believe this is the right thing to do. And so when he came by there, I was like, wow. I said, let me think about it and get back to you. So got back together with him the next day. And his name is Britt Killinger. And long story short, Julie Killinger is his wife. They taught Ty and Aiden.
Yeah.
I forget which grade it was, but she was Ty and Aiden's teacher, and just a small world of how the whole thing worked out. And so they're now partners with us on it. And it's one of those things that, as I was thinking about more and more about that and reflecting and trying to pray about how we're going to make this thing happen, and all of a sudden it happens. And my patron saint, St. Patrick. My middle name's Patrick, Curt Tappendorf, and to have that happen on St. Patrick's Day, coincidence, I don't know, or God and the angels and saints kind of working their thing to help me with this project that I still don't know what it's going to be. And I know what I want it to be, but it's still out there. And so I appreciate you having me on the show and to share my story, because I think that there's a lot of us out there that are in the same type of boat where they're just average Joes like myself, but they have a dream and they have a passion and they want to do it, but they're just scared to do it.
Yeah.
And if you believe in it, God will find a way to help you out through it.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that, and he's done that in my life, and I know for others he's done it. But unless you don't reflect on it and see that he's working, you don't know that God's helping you.
Yeah. That's so true, Curt. I mean, we say it every single week on Radio Theology. We say it every time on the Born to Be podcast. We believe, like God is for you, not against you. Like he's actually moving in your favor, and he's created you on purpose and for a purpose. And, Curt, I don't think it's as simplistic as like it may be, but I don't think it's like that God put Curt on earth to do a coffee house.
Right.
But I think this is a part of, of your life's purpose. And I think the thing that inspires me about it is, the thought that you had this idea and you immediately jumped in and took the risk. And it's like the story. And I think sometimes we don't think about this as parents. And I remember Donald Miller. I love his writing. I love his books, his podcast, everything Donald Miller does is great. And in one of his books, he told a story about a guy whose daughter has started dating this loser guy, and she was just, life was going down, grades was going down, like everything was negative. And this new boyfriend was it. He was, he was everything to her. And so this guy came to a friend and he asked him, what am I going to do? How do I get rid of this, this boyfriend? And the advice that the guy gave to this dad was, you need to start living a better story. He said the role that this bad boyfriend is giving your daughter to live is a more engaging and exciting role to play than the role she plays in your family's life.
Sure.
So you need to start living a more a better story and give her a better role to play. And so the story for this guy goes, he went and bought an orphanage in Mexico, I think it was, and he came home, same thing, came home and said, hey, honey, we own an orphanage, or we're gonna. No, he just bought. He signed something that they were gonna build it, and he was like, "Hey, we're building an orphanage in Mexico," and his wife was like, "What?" But then he, got his teenage daughter involved, and she went from just a regular girl trying to make it through life, whatever, to now she was a part of this story where, our family's going to save orphans. And, within 2 weeks, she dumps the boyfriend and she's raising money for this thing in Mexico. And now she has a great story, a role to play in life. And I just think about, for your 4 kids is that, this risk you guys have taken and the stories of God showing up and this guy showing up on St. Patrick's Day and helping you out financially. Like, these are stories that are teaching your kids. And I think the cool part is that, teaching our audience, it's like, as you step into that and take these risks, you know what I mean? And like this coffee house, not like it's not like it's going to be a church or something, right. But it's building community. It's building relationships. It's in line with the things that are in line with the heart of God, and to see how God is actually at work to begin working in your favor, and just the way it's impacted your kids. I mean, have you seen anything even right now, Curt? You've only been in it for a year, but I mean, have you seen a positive way of how it has started to affect the way your kids are interacting in your family?
Absolutely. Brianne's going to be our first employee. She's 14 now, so legal age in Indiana is 14, and so she's all into the Instagram. So she's in charge of the Instagram account for us. Yeah. Tyler, he is the one that loves going over with me and checking out the progress on the place, and Ella just loves to kind of hear the stories, and Aiden's out there cleaning and picking up trash and whatever he needs to, hands on the ground. And Sarah, there's a brand new elementary school being built just north of the schoolhouse, and so she just got a position there as a teacher, a 4th grade teacher next year.
Wow!
So she'll be right there. And
yeah.
So it's one of those things that it's an opportunity for us as a family to do something together and with the community and branch out and help them hopefully develop themselves and gain confidence and see that risks do come out, well sometimes, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But I told Brianne, I said, that 4-year promise I made to her 4 years ago, mm-hmm. Yesterday morning, I took her to the schoolhouse and we had breakfast there. And I had 8 days to spare until she graduated. Yeah. But I've fulfilled my promise, and I made sure that I had breakfast with her. And so we sat down and with all the concrete, and it wasn't my vision to it was my vision to have everything done, but we kind of looked around and said this is something in progress, and this is kind of what you can work for. And so I was glad that I was able to meet my promise.
Oh gosh. It got me around the feels there, Curt. Dude, it's so true, and I love it. Now, I know that you're so inspired listening right now, because if you have kids, if you don't have kids, maybe you're a kid of just thinking about what is the risk, what is the vision, what is the thing that you want to go after, and you'll never know the impact that'll have as you step into that. And Curt, in 15 years, if this is the most successful business venture you've ever done, great. If in 15 years, for some reason, it doesn't exist anymore, there, in my opinion, for this, there is no failure in this. Like that moment, your daughter, Britt, she's going to remember the moment that her dad made a promise, and 4 years later, sitting in an in-progress thing, you guys had breakfast together. Right. And it's those moments that, you don't have to be, so often, I love the fact that you kind of started off saying, hey, I'm not the Harvard grad guy, I'm just a normal, civil engineer. But it's like, don't buy into the myth that your life can't do something significant because you don't have some great title, because you're not a celebrity, because you're not an Instagram person. Like, whatever the things you're telling yourself right now, that I couldn't make a difference because fill in the blank of your story. I want you to understand that God has made you on purpose and for a purpose. And your story is so much more significant than you could understand. And it may be a coffee shop, it may be a business, it may be a relationship, it may be school. I don't know what it is for you. But God is going to begin to give you an opportunity. He's going to put something in front of you that catches your attention, that catches your curiosity, and chase that. Chase that. And I love, Curt, the way you put it, that your simple acronym of KISS, right? Yep. And take that swing, get to the plate, take the risk. You know what I mean? Make that impression. I mean, all the way through. What was the second one? It's the strengths. Find your strengths. And the last one was
smell the roses.
Smell the roses. So good. Curt Tappendorf, listen, if you're in the area, and you like coffee like I do, Schoolhouse 7 Café. It's at the corner of Cynthia Ann Road and
Southeastern Parkway.
Open this summer.
Yep.
I'd love to go. What's the gentleman's name that went to school there?
George Underwood.
George Underwood. I'd love to go meet George on the 7th, right? Is the goal to open it?
July 7th.
So check them out. Is there a website, Curt, they can get in touch and see what's going on with
Website's in progress right now. It's schoolhouse7.com or schoolhouse7cafe.com. We do have an Instagram page, Schoolhouse 7 Cafe, and then also Facebook, Schoolhouse 7 Cafe on Facebook. So find us there.
Awesome. Listen, I love it. I love it. And if you want to get started on finding your purpose, I want to encourage you to head over to spiritualdna.me, jump on the website, take the online course. The next time, join us for a live workshop is coming up in September of 2019, later this year. You got time to put that on your calendar. Have a great day. And never forget, God has created you on purpose and for a purpose. He is near you, not far from you, and He is for you, not against you. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Born to Be podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Born to Be podcast. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got a question for Pastor Darren, a suggestion for a future guest, or if the podcast has made an impact in your life, get in touch with us at blackbirdmission.com. And if no one else tells you today, you were made on purpose and for a purpose. God is near to you, not far from you, and God is for you, not against you. Have a great week.